Welcome to Insights. I'm Dick Goldberg, and today we revisit ideas and techniques to enhance your relationship. On our last visit with psychologist Dr. Deborah Hoffman, who's, by the way, with us today, she shared with us 4 critical things not to do in a relationship that can really be toxic. They're called the 4 Horsemen. They were invented or discovered by Dr. John Gottman, a leading researcher in marriage. The 4 are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Criticism being belittling your partner rather than saying what your needs are, what your interests are. I.e., you're a slob is criticism. Saying it would help me if you would pick your things up off the floor is a complaint. Then there's contempt, which is really being disrespectful, and you might say things like, you are a real jerk. That's not a good thing to say, and that's probably the worst thing you can do to destroy a relationship. And then there's defensiveness, which is retaliating if your partner has an issue or concern about your behavior, versus listening and trying to at least acknowledge there might be some sliver of truth in what the partner is saying. The partner, if you have this trait, knows they're in trouble if they have a problem with you. And finally, stonewalling, which is refusing now and forever to discuss an issue that your partner wants to talk about. It's okay to table it for an hour or 2 or even a day, but not to refuse to talk about it. And then we moved on to what do you do for a rich marriage? And that's where there was so much more to say that I asked Deborah if she'd come back and flesh this out for us. And what we had gotten to was that after many years, marriages often get a little stale. You lose the excitement and the joy and the appreciation for each other that you had when you were dating and in the first few years. And she talked a little about how to get it back, kind of revisiting some of the things you really enjoyed doing and reappreciating the things about your partner you might have neglected appreciating. We had moved to listening, and I sense that's a very important issue in a marriage. Thanks for coming back, Deborah.
Thank you.
Listening, where do you put that in your hierarchy?
Well, it might be first. If you show that you're listening as well as can move the relationship and the conversation to the next level by building on that listening to ask the first person who was speaking more about what they're concerned about and really be there with them. It's also a matter of being present as well as listening.
What does it mean to be present?
Probably not watching television at the same time. A lot of people can really read, watch television, listen to the radio, and hear what you're saying, but it doesn't feel to the speaker like you're listening, so you have to show that.
Okay. And is it enough to be quiet and look at them while they're talking?
You need to be able to say, so you're concerned about this, well, what about this? In other words, to ask further questions or to give some kind of a non-defensive response for yourself.
Well, this is if they got an issue with you, but how about just in general, listening to your partner?
Well, it's important to be able to have a back and forth conversation. One of the things that Gottman talks about, for example, the researcher that you had just spoken of, is that we need to have a sense of each other's what he calls love maps. We need to have a sense of the things that our partner values, and we have to have a sense that the other person knows about us. And we can remember the names of friends and perhaps something important that they did that day. So what they're doing every day and what they're interested in, as well as their deeper values. And to ask questions about that. Those are the things you do in those first conversations when you've met someone that feels so delicious. I feel like I'm known, you accept me, I want to know you. So neither partner is doing all the talking and the other one all the either listening or spacing out.
You know, I do know and believe that you're right. This is extremely important. Why is it so hard for people to do this, to get it?
Well, they may not have the same interests. At first, it sounds like everything is the same. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know, I come from California and you come from Washington State, so we're both from the West Coast. But they're not really the same. And so we start hearing the differences. At the beginning, it's all excitement, and then it turns into a sort of a deeper attachment. And then it turns a little bit, well, you were calling it stale, but certainly predictable. And so it's finding those things that may be the same answers as yesterday, but are still very important to the other person, and then going deeper into that. Well, what was that like for you when he said that, or whatever, without trying to fix them, but to say, I care.
Okay, so you asked me about my day, honey, and I say, well, I went to the office and I had a lot of forms to fill out, and then at 11 I had lunch with pre-lunch, and then I had lunch, and then I had to fill out more forms. Isn't that boring to listen to?
It is, and it's probably boring to say.
Ah.
So the difference is that it's sort of like the difference in some ways between black and white and color.
Ah.
If you can fill in some of the details that give a sense of richness and color to the picture you're presenting, or if you're the listener, you ask questions that aren't meant to be intrusive or questioning, but a matter of interest. So what did you do after that? So it has a lot to do with tone of voice and facial expression as well.
Might I add, you might try, did you enjoy your day?
Exactly.
Let's get some emotional color reaction.
Exactly. You want as much of that as possible without intruding on the other person. Sometimes, and this can be stereotypically male and female, men seem to want to fix the thing that a woman is simply wanting to talk about, and women tend to want to ask more questions about these details, and men sometimes do find it challenging or sort of attacking. So you have to check in with each other and find out what sorts of just basically conversational styles make a difference.
You know what bothers me about some studies about this conversation is that I've heard that you can have happy couples who don't like to talk much. That kind of, for us marriage counselors, that's kind of confusing, because that's our business, is talking and getting people to talk to each other. So is it true for everybody you better connect intimately and talk about all these things, or are there some couples that are perfectly happy eating in silence?
Well, some couples might be, but you have to make sure. Check in with yourself, first of all, and ask if you're sort of taking the consolation prize, or would you rather be talking, in which case do speak up about that. And the other thing is that this research actually says that you don't have to be saying anything deep, but you do have to be giving some kind of appreciation and getting some as well. So one of the things that's important, according to the research, and it comes out over and over again, is that you need 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative. So if you're upset about the other person leaving muddy shoes in the hallway, make sure that there are 5 positives. Oh, it's nice to have you here. I've made something special to eat. I hope you like it, and so on. Again, watching the tone of voice so it doesn't sound sarcastic to either one of you.
How about compliments? In terms of, it's a positive to say, you know, I just love living with you, or, you know, you are so smart, those kind of things. If you give 5 compliments, is that 5 positives?
Anything that is considered positive by both of you, truly positive, not, well, we've agreed that that's our mode of talking. So some people learn in their early childhood or from their partners sometimes to sort of say, oh, you're such a, and that's supposed to be endearing even though it's negative. So we're not talking about those, but things that both really feel positively about.
Okay, so let's say you got, as everybody does, some issues with your partner, and you know you're going to want to bring them up. Is it wise to make sure you get a lot in the bank and let them know all the wonderful things about them as often as you can, and still be genuine?
As long, we're talking about the bank of positives versus negatives.
So when you have your gripe or your issue, they're more likely to be receptive, and it won't be as destructive as if you haven't given any positive.
Absolutely, and there are an awful lot of people who somehow believe that if they say positive things, then their partner will think everything's fine and never change anything, that they have to make something completely negative in order for them to be heard.
To them you say?
You say, this is important to me. I ask that you stop what you're doing and really listen to me. If you can't do that right now, if it's too soon after work or you're too tired, when can we do it in the next couple of days so that we can both give each other full attention? So you never have to say you're a creep, and I just want you to remember that so that you feel guilty, and we'll do what I'm saying here.
You, maybe it's a secret, but you're a married woman. And do you ever get tired of hearing a similar compliment from your husband if he gives it to you once a week?
Not if it's one I like. In fact, once a day is just fine.
Yeah. So, among many things, my wife has a great smile. And whenever it strikes me, I might tell her in 30 years, she's never gotten tired of hearing about that. But I think a lot of people have a sense if you give a compliment once, that's enough for 20 years.
Well, there are lots of jokes about that. But what you need to do is watch the reaction. And the facial reaction will give you a lot of information about whether that was not so great, but I guess I'll smile. That will take a moment to get the smile in there. If they light up a little bit, then you know you've got one. And it doesn't mean you only stick to one, of course. And so what you want to do is to notice what's going on around you. People want to have what they've attempted to do for you or what they value in themselves noticed. And so that suggests that you value and respect them as well.
Okay. Now, building this rich relationship, so it's likely to weather the storms of adversity that are going to come. What else do you do to build a richness to your relationship?
Well, one of the things to realize is that we want to sort of balance routine with spontaneity and with the stability that we've come to count on with some variety. All of which needs to be within the values of both ourselves and our partner. Some people will stretch a little too far and make themselves very uncomfortable, and then usually they'll blame the partner instead of themselves for the choices they've made. So we're talking about finding, without losing all routine and stability, finding some spontaneity and variety. And what has been noted is that newness, like in the newness of the relationship back when, but newness now as well, a slight sense of danger. So something that's a little scary for you might be riding a motorbike, or it might be being on a speedboat, or it might be doing something that you aren't very good at, so it's a little scary for you.
By you mean the couple or one individual?
Either of you. It could be both. What we're looking for is that the awareness that newness, some danger, not obviously that you're going to kill yourself, but some danger, and sexuality are paired in the mind.
Oh.
Paired with three of them, but all of them are connected. And so when you have exciting or slightly scary or new experiences together, that's hooked together with the sense of the relationship.
Let me take this out of the area of physical risk. Let's say you have a couple who's 73 and neither of them has ever played bridge, and they take a bridge lesson together. Would that qualify? There's not a lot of risk here.
Well, it depends on if they care, of course. If they feel like there's a sense of risk, like they really need to win, and they might not, or they'll look badly in front of the other people that they're learning with, or whatever, there's a sense of risk, and then, of course, you need some sense of success or safety at the end of it.
Okay, so this isn't just the idea of doing new things as a couple. They have to have a little edge to them, or they're not as important?
Well, each of those things can be. Like newness by itself can do it, which is why a lot of people have more sex on vacations, or expect it, perhaps.
Is that true?
It tends to be the case, and part of the guess, of course, is that we don't have the telephone ringing and worry about opening the email, et cetera, et cetera. But part of it is just noticing new things together. So, for example, if you go to the same place on vacation every year, that could give a sense of relaxation, which is nice, but not newness.
Wow.
Unless you do something new.
So
even board games that are new can be new.
Okay. How often is it, though, that one person in the couple says, oh, let's go mountain climbing. Other says, no, let's go to a different movie,
Well, you do have to look at the difference in toleration for high thrill and low thrill. And it has to be something that works for both of you. So it might be something that's not quite as thrilling for the high thrill-seeking individual, but it's new.
Okay.
And something that's scary and, therefore just a little emotionally dangerous, like a scary movie. There are people who get very scared in certain kinds of movies, so it might work.
Okay. Well, this kind of goes against some things I would have thought, that sharing common interests is very important in doing things together that you enjoy. Helps enrich a marriage, but you're adding a dimension I hadn't heard, which is add this excitement, unknown, scary factor. If you weigh it, how important is it to make sure it's new, scary, whatever, versus you share things together and do them?
Well, if you have a good, solid relationship that feels like you're living it each day, not just living over yesterday, it's okay if it's stable and if you do the same things, because there is that sense of attachment. We need that. It's just a balance. And so being able to walk the other way on the block is new. In fact, they found that if things have felt quite stale in the marriage, particularly sexually, sleeping on the other side of your bed can make a big difference. It just changes our orientation.
I have a hunch this is true also for individuals, even if you're not in a relationship, doing something different.
It does help us get excited, the difference, and feel renewed, and gain more interest in the things that we've already had in our lives. The difference is that if you do them with someone, you will feel emotionally connected to that person, and that's what we're looking for in terms of the marriage. One of the things that happens is sometimes people will get very excited about something that's not part of the twosome, and then they'll feel more attached to a group or an individual in that, and so we have to have a balancing factor.
Boy, I have so many things to ask you about. Let's talk about mutual dreams. Does that click anything with you as an idea? Mutual dreams.
Well, what we're looking for here is, what is your dream for your life? And what do you want to have happen on this next trip to a place we've been to before, or a new place? What's your vision of a good version of this? And so they don't have to be the same dream. For example, we're going to San Francisco, and your dream is to see and experience a certain part of it, and mine is to do something else. So the idea is to have, rather than a compromise where I give up what I am really wanting, to make a bigger umbrella over both needs that is based on the meaning that is shared. So, for example, adventure. I'm going to go for a run in the Haight-Ashbury area, and you're going to go down near the wharf and explore some stores, and then we'll both have explored and come back together and share those over a dinner we both
So
love.
it's kind of something to anticipate you both are looking forward to, that's a little, again, exciting. It's got some charge to it, and you can dream together about future things.
That's right, and if it's not shared, if you're not sharing something, you have to look at why. So, for example, if it's something that your spouse or partner would disagree with or be upset by, is it just that they're oversensitive, or is there something that you're really withholding from them about something that's important to you?
Can you give us an example?
Well, a lot of things happen at the office, and sometimes who you do them with gets to be more and more important to you. And it's interesting when people don't even let their partner know who they've been talking with at lunch about some new project and so on, because they're sort of protecting that relationship a little bit, and then it becomes more and more important to them.
Why would they do that?
Because their spouse may not have expertise or interest in that particular part of their life, and so it's important to find out what's, not like a Sherlock Holmes, but I'm curious. Curiosity, humor, really taking pleasure in successes for yourself and your spouse or partner is very, very important.
You bring up a secret. What about secrets in a marriage? Are there some secrets that are okay, or should you have no secrets from your spouse?
You should have no secrets from your spouse with this understanding. There's a difference between something that's a secret, which the other person would care about, and if they'd care about it. They'd care that you were always having lunch with a particular colleague and not even telling you that colleague exists, or that you're starting a new project and it may change your financial ability to participate in the household, or your interests or time at home, etc. That would be a secret, and it's not okay to do that. Whereas who you talk to at the bus doesn't matter that much. That's more just a sense of having your own life.
Yeah, well, that's minutia too. But what about let's say your secret is you're very attracted to someone at work. You're not going to act on it, but you find her very attractive, or him.
How do you know you're not going to act on it?
Well, it's been true for 11 years so far, and you haven't. And you just know it's off limits, but you do find that person attractive. Do you tell your partner?
I think that it's extraordinarily wise to tell your partner about that while it's still very small, because it helps you build fences where you want them.
Oh, so you're less likely to act on your attraction if you tell your partner you're attracted to that person than if you don't?
Right, and it's also helpful if you say what specifically attracts you. So if you say something like, I appreciate the fact that they really understand my project. It's very different from, I'm not going to tell you about it, I'm going to keep spending more and more time talking about my project. This person really understands, I'm excited. That goes to the adrenaline we were talking about before. You're sharing an adrenaline rush with somebody who's not your spouse or partner.
But isn't that saying to your partner, you should understand it too? I like talking to her because she gets it and you don't?
Well, it doesn't say that they have to understand it the same way. They may not be interested, but that something else will take up that. It's almost like filling a beaker with a certain amount of adrenaline. You have to have enough excitement and connectedness in a real positive and new sort of way, or a present today way, so that you want to come home and tell the spouse about it.
So we're even hearing some excitement in the background as the siren goes by, just to emphasize your point. There it is.
Just to let us know, right?
Yes. Well, I know I'm the interviewer and supposed to just draw this out of you, but it seems to me there are some secrets that are best left secret, that maybe some people are attracted to a different person every month, and it comes and goes. That might be hurtful for their spouse to hear, and of no consequence is a secret. And if they're comfortable with that secret, what harm are they doing by keeping it if they're afraid it'll just make their spouse uneasy or worried?
Well, the question is, how much can they trust their spouse?
Oh.
And we, of course, all have individual abilities to handle those sorts of things. That's another individual relationship skill. So I have to have skills myself to be in a relationship well. Okay. And so one of those things is to be able to withstand hearing some things that make me uncomfortable and still connect with my partner about them. And then he or she can come home and tell me about what it is that's going on in their lives, and I can say, oh, okay, and tell me more about that, or tell me less about that, but at least I know it's happening, and that sort of thing, and then go on and do something special together, as opposed to kind of wondering where the energy is being dissipated outside the marriage.
So fully knowing your spouse helps for that warm
So the
connection.
most important thing in that kind of situation that you had mentioned about being attracted to someone different every month is, I tend to get attracted to people, a different person every month. That's the point you share. It doesn't matter who it is unless he or she wants to know.
Okay. And other things we can do to keep that marriage rich and joyful, you want to jump right in.
Well, I think a lot of it is really whether or not you provide yourself with enough meaning in your own life and fulfill your own dreams so that you can bring them home, rather than saying, well, I've given up so much, this person kind of owes me, and how dare they have fun on their own. Someone might go to a conference, for example, and really enjoy a lecture about something that you can't understand why they'd want to do that, or why they'd want to go to another conference like that. But you might love ice skating. And so both of you have your needs met in those individual sorts of ways, and then you come together and have plenty of space to do what each of you wants.
What about the person who's not growing, not developing, and doesn't have much to bring to the relationship in terms of new ideas? Is that a problem for the relationship, or just the way it is?
Well, it depends on whether it's really okay for both of them over the long haul. All of us, I think, are fine, or most of us are very, very fine with the idea of saying, well, this is a quiet period in my life, and, you know, when the kids are older, or when I don't have to take care of my aging, parent anymore, and so on, we can, kick up our heels a little bit. But I think that usually those things go on longer than we think they're going to, and that emotionally we really want them to, in terms of the loss of connection with our spouse. We don't want that loss just because we have other things in our lives.
I guess I'm getting, what if your spouse gets boring?
The question is whether or not you have enough excitement in your life that you can bring home. Not that you leave out there. That's a different kind of excitement. There may be things that a boring person wants to do anyway and share with you. It might be that they don't talk about movies, but they like to see them, for example. And then you could talk with your friends about the movie and so on. I think, though, that it's important to recognize the difference between someone who has a very exciting, let's say, career life, and then they come home and they're exhausted, and they really just don't want to talk, and they're behind the newspaper and so on. What will happen for most spouses, they'll feel very left out. And so it is necessary to create some things that the person is willing to do and won't be too tired to do because they like them, and then go out and do them together.
I think underneath this question for me is, are there individual responsibilities you have as a person so that you remain a good partner to someone else, not just in how you're interacting with them, but how you're leading your own life and your own psychological well-being?
Well, I think for one thing, it's important to say the things together early on, and then repeat them periodically, that you've agreed on, so that there isn't a misunderstanding about what things you do take outside the marriage. So, for example, I had used the example yesterday in our previous talk about, well, I expect that we'll spend all holidays together, and the other person wants to spend time with their their family of origin. And so really getting clear about those expectations and following through on them and keeping those, not only the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law of those agreements. And then beyond that, to do the things that, as an individual, I feel keep me healthy and interested in my life and so on, so that I'm not demanding so much from my spouse or partner.
Okay, so you just retired. You used to have a job as a psychologist. Now you gave it up. And you're bored, and you're not great company because you're kind of bored, lethargic. The old Deb Hoffman is gone. Does your husband have a right to beef?
He has a right to want more, say he wants more, and have more. The question is where he's going to get it, and that's up to me.
Okay, so you do have some individual responsibility to keep alive as a human being.
I think so. Yes.
Okay.
And it's interesting because even as people become quite elderly and so on, they still have lots of great stories to tell. Things that sometimes your spouse hasn't heard before because they just came to mind from earlier in your life. There are lots of things that you might watch on television and have thoughts about, have dinner with somebody and want to share. So there is, even when there's less ability, let alone choice, to be out in the world, there's still lots of internal sharing that's possible.
A couple of other thoughts here on sharing fond memories.
Very important. Very, very important. First of all, for ourselves. We need to remember those early times that drew us together and where we were and what it was like for us, and allow ourselves to re-experience, as if they were today, the internal feelings that we had that make us smile, that make our eyes crinkle up, and so on. And I even suggest to people that when they've identified some of those things, that they find a way to remind themselves with a word or putting a picture of that event, even their meeting or whatever it is. If they met at Jamba Juice, to stick a Jamba Juice thing up where they see it often and so on, so that they can say, oh yeah, we're those people. We're just in older bodies in the same inside.
So is this partly reminding yourself of what drew you to your partner?
Exactly. And one thing that's interesting is that going back to some of those same places, why people go to a second honeymoon in the same place, for example, it can remind us, I forgot that the fruit tasted like this in such and such a place.
Yeah. One of the things that strikes me when we're talking about listening is how you may, in the dating period, be sitting there in a restaurant for 2 hours fascinated with each other, and then fast forward 10 years to 2 kids, to all the responsibilities, to jumping up and down from the dinner table, gone, right? And so how do you recreate that?
Well, it takes time, and it takes priority. It's very important to say, my relationship with my spouse mustn't be taken for granted. Just because we're both parents, we're both in the upward section of our careers, because we both have interests, we maybe like different sports, so we take some time to go play those with other people and so on. It's still important to make this relationship one of the highest priorities in my life. Otherwise, as we often say, the kids won't get what they need and the rest of life won't be what we want it to be. So do I want to leave this person forever, or do I want to keep this person and really recreate what originally drew me to them and then build more?
So those things, those emotions, should there be some routine for emotional connection?
It's a very good idea. And let's suppose it's we take a walk every Saturday morning or Sunday afternoon, but we go to different places. And so we have that time that is not to be messed with, unless, let's suppose, it's Christmas or something where we have other absolute obligations which are unusual, and then we make it a different day that same week. So we do have those times together, and we know that that's something we can count on. And rather than just being completely silent during those, if we could just say something, it might be, oh, I haven't seen that kind of leaf before, or it sure looks like it's changing seasons early this year, or whatever, so that you share something about what your inner life is with the person who you're walking or spending time with.
Finally, any resources that you'd like to point out to people if they want to keep learning and apply to their relationships? Any books, any other resources that might be the best thing for them?
Well, I think there are a lot of such things, and as long as we don't focus only on what's wrong and we look at what's possible, there are a number of books by John and Julie Gottman, for example, Gottman, Howard Markman. There are a number of things which are really excellent by Michelle Weiner Davis, It's a hyphenated WEINER hyphen Davis, and a variety of things, even church or community sorts of marriage enhancement. That sounds a little scary to most people, so it can be going to the farmer's market together and so on.
Okay.
So it may not be books, it may be lots of things.
These workshops, these weekend workshop kind of things, are those advisable, or are they kind of, you do it and then a year later it's gone?
Well, yes, of course it's gone, but you have that opportunity to remember it too. Because sometimes when you go through a crisis or tell the things you haven't been wanting to tell, or, I never admitted to you that I really don't like your mom much. When we go there, can I go take a walk and you won't mind, or whatever it is. If you share those things and work through them, you'll actually be closer. So it's worth doing those things and remembering those. Oh, yes, a year ago when we did that thing at church or whatever it is, we talked about taking a picnic when the weather turned nice. It's a little cooler. We've had a hot spell. Let's go take a picnic.
With that picnic thought, I'll say goodbye to you, Deborah, and thank you very much for sharing all these ideas. I think it's very useful.
Thank you so much.
And I hope you'll join us on the next edition of Insights.